Have you ever played WTF Sudoku?
You mean WTF as in what the f?
Yes.
What the f is so all fired? What the f about Sudoku?
Regular Sudoku is played on a 9x9 grid with exactly one of every digit 1 through 9 in every row, column, and 3x3 grid.
So what?
WTF Sudoku is played on a 25x25 grid with exactly one of every letter A through Y in every row, column, and 5x5 group.
WTF. How can I play WTF Sudoku?
You can play it online at www.cybermansoftware.com/games. You can also buy a book of puzzles on Amazon.com. Just search for WTF Sudoku.
Book? You mean on paper?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's www.cybermansoftware.com/games or by searching for WTF Sudoku on Amazon.com?
Yes.
Welcome to Freedom Rocks. This is Rochester's premier libertarian talk show. Today we're going to be talking with Chris Edes. Chris Edes is a candidate for the New York State governor position. And the topic today is going to be stand your ground rules. My name is Mark Glogowski. I'm a libertarian. Hello, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Good. Over the last couple of days, you may have heard the president get on the stage a few times and talk about how the country needs to reassess stand your ground rules. He feels that if Trayvon Martin used those standards, he could have shot Zimmerman. I think that was his words. And he could have said that was just standing his ground. What is your opinion of stand your ground rules, and what are the state laws regarding this that people should know about?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to realize that stand your ground did not actually come into play in this case. Stand your ground laws are distinguished from other kind of self-defense statutes by the idea that you don't have to retreat. And so in this situation, where George Zimmerman was on his back and Trayvon Martin was on top of him punching him, you know, the so-called duty to retreat doesn't come into play because where's he going to go?
You can't retreat further into the ground.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so in that case, it's not the stand your ground law as distinguished from other laws. Because in general, stand your ground law is the idea that, okay, you're on the street, some other guy's on the street, you have an equal right to the street. Just because he walks up and threatens you, you know, why should you have to run away and let him, you know, own the street that's a public street just because he's a threatening person? You know, that just like says, oh, we'll give criminals, you know, free run.
Free reign, yeah.
Right, yeah. And what is that? That's like saying, you know, like, you know, if it reminds me of a female acquaintance of mine, and she was at a party, and they're all, you know, like, and this guy was, you know, getting fresh with her and coming on to her and grabbing her, and she's like, you know, felt threatened and left the party. Why should she have had to do that? You know, why shouldn't that guy, you know, if I had been there, you know, I would have kicked that guy out because he's the troublemaker.
Right.
You know, he's the guy that's doing something wrong. You're out of here, buddy. Right? It shouldn't be her duty to retreat, you know, just because the other guy was threatening her. Like, that's completely backwards, mixed up logic. And so that's why stand your ground law is a good idea. But that's not, it didn't come into play in this particular case.
Do you know how many states currently have stand your ground laws?
It's about, I want to say 20 or 20-something. 20 or 22. I think it's somewhere 20 to 24 in the lower 20s.
Oh, that's quite a few. My impression, listening to the news, only Florida and maybe one other state has stand your ground laws. And
no, the media. Yeah, no, the media doesn't like to. They like to portray a certain narrative. Although, of course, and you know, I don't know the stand your ground laws in every state. They may be written differently. Florida, you know, I haven't read those news reports. They might be pointing out some difference between Florida and other states, but yeah, in which case they, you know, I'm sure there was bias. I'm not sure how much.
Okay.
I mean, certainly when you look at the pictures of a 12-year-old Trayvon Martin in there, And the picture of George Zimmerman after he gained 100 pounds, sitting in jail, I mean, that portrays a distorted picture on both sides, because you look at a cute little 12-year-old kid and you're like, how could this person have been threatening this, I don't know how much George Zimmerman weighs now. A lot. This big guy and a little 12-year-old kid, and people look at that in the paper and they're like, how could this kid have been threatening him? But of course that wasn't. And you look at the picture of Trayvon Martin as a 17-year-old, and he's a pretty big guy, and he could be bigger than I am.
Yeah.
I just didn't scrutinize the picture that closely, but he certainly could be. And that would present a very
And before Zimmerman put on all that weight, he wasn't that big of a guy.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, certainly you have to wonder about the media's motives in using those two pictures.
Right.
And when there are other pictures that are available that they could be using, and they just don't.
Yeah, questioning the media's motives is something that we need to talk about in another episode. So, because lots of things come to question in my mind when I read the media, and some of the media I just don't read anymore because I know it's going to be wrong. So when you go back to New York State,
right?
What is the law in terms of using deadly force?
In general, in New York State, if you're in your home, right, you don't have the duty to retreat. Everywhere else you have a duty to retreat. Actually, I have this highlighted here. Person may not use deadly physical force unless, right, the actor reasonably believes that they are going to use, the other person is going to use deadly force and they can't retreat. So basically it means if you can reasonably believe that somebody is going to hurt you, then, and you can't run away, then you can defend yourself. Also, if you're in your own dwelling, your house, if under the direction of a police officer, so if you've got a gun and the police officer tells you, hold the gun on this guy, shoot him if he moves, and he moves and you shoot him, that's okay, because a police officer told you to do it.
Shoot him if he moves, or shoot him if he retreats, if he tries to escape.
It says, it's okay. You're not under a duty to retreat if you are assisting a police officer or acting at the latter's direction. So if he says, hold your gun on this guy, and the guy charges you, then...
Okay, we're going to have to take a little break here. We'll be right back.
As you may have noticed, you can watch Freedom Rocks for free on RCTV or on YouTube, but it takes money to produce good quality TV shows. You can support Freedom Rocks by shopping at our Cafe Press shop. There you can find t-shirts for men and women, tote and gym bags, coffee mugs, beer steins, food and beverage thermoses, and a bunch of other items Cafe Press offers. You can find our shop at cafepress.com/freedomrocks, all lowercase and no apostrophe.
Okay, we're back. There are some situations where the police himself does not have the authority to use deadly force. And if he doesn't have the authority to use the deadly force, you can't be ordered to use deadly force as his proxy.
Yes, this is true, yeah. Section 3530. But I think in any case, well, I think that'd be something up to the courts to decide, because I think the citizen normally would take direction from the police officer.
They would normally take direction, and they usually would not question the police officer because they wouldn't have the legal background.
Right.
But in certain situations, let's say the police officer just broke into your home and without a warrant, and for some reason were accompanying him, and he told you to shoot.
Or he had an accomplice.
Well, that's clearly not an authorized situation.
Right.
And you would then not be held
blameless.
Blameless, yeah. No, you would not be held blameless.
Yeah.
So that seems like the New York State law, a lot of thought has gone into it. And except for the stand your ground issue, and you're out in the public park, and you're enjoying yourself and your family's enjoying yourself, and some people come in to literally disrupt your enjoyment, why should you have to flee?
Right.
And I think one of the things we need to talk about on the stand your ground issue is what happens before you stand your ground. Why do you have to stand your ground and feel it's necessary? I mean, the courts seem to be ignoring the preconditions to the situation that has developed to cause you to use deadly force. They never question the motive. For instance, in this Trayvon Martin situation, why was he there? That was never really discussed, brought out, or emphasized in terms of, did all the break-ins cease when Trayvon Martin was killed? Or are they still going on? And he was just one of many. He could have been the only one. And motive for using stand your ground. Somebody is robbing a stranger and you happen to be there. Do you flee or do you intervene? I mean, stand your ground says you stand your ground and you intervene. But if you don't have that law, then you see somebody getting robbed, well, you're next. So flee. Let the person suffer the consequences. And I think this is where the stand your ground laws, if we're going to reinvestigate them, we need to look at the law itself in terms of what is missing in the law that clarifies your use of stand your ground.
Yeah. Well, actually, under New York state law, if you can interfere with somebody committing kidnapping, forcible rape, forcible criminal sexual act, or robbery, if you reasonably believe that this is so. So you can defend people if you reasonably believe that they're going to come to serious harm.
Okay, so if they're committing a felony or anything close to that, and you believe they're going to cause you or someone else harm, then we do have a stand your ground law.
Well, let's look at this to make sure we're doing.
But do we have an obligation? I mean, what's missing in society, in my opinion, is there is no expectation established that the average individual is going to intervene on the behalf of a victim.
Well, actually, in robbery, you can't just. Sorry to interrupt. I was just reading this. Only if harm is there. So if you don't believe the other person to get hurt in the course of the robbery, you can't use the physical harm. You can't use force. But yeah.
So the expectation is, if somebody's going to steal something, the average individual will stand by and watch it happen, or just ignore it and go about their daily life.
That seems, at least under New York, like I said, unless they're beating somebody up, you're just supposed to let that happen. If you don't believe there's going to be harm done.
I have a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, well, I think most people do. I mean, that's like I said. I mean, each state having its own law. New York being weaker than Florida's law. There's still the basic principle is, do we, attempt to stop a crime from happening, or do we trust the police to, arrest the person and punish them afterwards? And the police don't always catch the guy. And ironically, in the situation where people are like in New York City or Chicago, where under the law it's very difficult to have a gun for personal defense, but police don't catch people that often, compared to some place like Rochester, where violent crimes are more likely to be solved. I mean, you go to some place like Chicago, the chances are the police are never going to catch the guy. And maybe in some place like robbery, maybe you have insurance, maybe you don't. But in a case like assault, you already got beat up. And you were raped, or God help us, murdered, and it's too late. And the police catch the guy, even if they do catch the guy, you already got hurt. And if they don't catch the guy, then they'll probably do it to somebody else again.
Or even if they do catch the guy, probably out on bail or soon out on parole, and he'll do it again.
Yeah, well, there's that too. It's, like we fill up our prison with so many nonviolent drug offenders that actually in California they let out violent criminals. They let everybody out early because their prisons are too crowded. But actually, I had a friend of mine who went through the criminal justice system in California, and you go to prison, they at least at that time, they just cut your sentence in half. Everybody's, murderers, rapists, and potheads, because they, instead of doing what you or I would think is reasonable and letting the potheads out and keeping the murderers and rapists in. And so, that's where the gun comes into play, because, if you're smoking a joint with someone.
There's two issues about this stand your ground I'd like to cover. One is statistics. I understand you have some statistics in terms of the different defenses for people in terms of what happens if they use them. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So these statistics are based on these books available at the Rochester Central Public Library. Armed, New Perspectives on Gun Control by Gary Kleck and Don B. Cates.
Oh, no, you didn't see that. Hold that up right in front of you. Yep, okay.
Okay. The Great American Gun Debate, Essays on Firearms and Violence, also by Don B. Cates and Gary Kleck.
Okay.
Also available at the Rochester Public Library, Central. And also by Gary Kleck, Point Blank, Guns and Violence in America.
Okay. And so what did you find?
Well, I found these statistics, and these is based on a study regarding people that were faced robbery, assault, and burglary, and adopted various self-defense strategies, and their chances of being injured or having property loss. So in this study, people that were robbed, that's as opposed to burglary. Burglary is breaking into the house. Robbery is you're out on the street, give me your money. They had a 23.6% chance of being injured if they did not try to defend themselves. And they had their various self-defense strategies, such as attacking them with a gun, threatening them with a gun but not attacking them, yelling, screaming from pain and fear, trying to attract attention generally, running away, calling the police, trying to reason with your attacker, and things of that nature. So the 20
Okay, let me just take a quick break here, and we'll be right back, and we'll have these statistics.
Did you know high-quality versions of all episodes of Freedom Rocks are available on DVD? Each DVD contains 3 episodes for just $15. We also have specials that aren't on our CTV or YouTube. You can find links to all of our DVDs on the Freedom Rocks website, freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com.
Okay, we're back. I just want to remind people that this is Freedom Rocks, and we have a series of episodes on CDs available at Amazon.com. Check it out, and also check out http://freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com. Thank you. Okay?
Right.
We're back. So what were those statistics? What happens if somebody just decides they're going to scream and attract attention? What's the chances of getting injured?
It actually is effective trying to attract attention generally. So it goes from 23.6% to 14.0% if you do something to try to attract attention. If you scream from pain and fear, it's not as effective. It only drops like about 1.5%. But these statistics, I mean, you have to understand, like, if you're screaming from pain and fear, then you're probably being hurt.
Yeah,
right, you're being hurt.
Yeah.
And so versus trying to attract attention generally, I mean, it's a little late at that point.
A little late, yeah.
But trying to attract attention does help. Running away does help. If you run away, it actually drops, at least in the case of robbery, from 23.6 to 4.9%. So that is a good strategy. However, if you attack them with a gun, in this study, there was no injury. So if you pull out a gun and you shoot the guy, you don't get hurt.
That sounds logical to me.
Yeah. Whereas if you run away, you've got a 4.9% chance of still getting hurt. Although, if you threaten them with a gun and you don't use it, you have a 9% chance of getting hurt, which is better than not doing anything, but not as good as running away.
So if you're going to pull a gun,
you should use it.
Use it. Otherwise, leave it where it is and just run away.
Right. If you're better off, if you're not going to actually use the gun, you're better off running away. But if you are going to shoot the other guy, then you're better off shooting the guy. And that's down this whole self-defense strategy thing. That is, pulling a gun and shooting them is your best chance of avoiding injury. Versus all of these other things. Attacking them, if you attack them with another weapon, and it doesn't say probably knife or something, you have a 1.6% chance of injury. So pulling on a knife and stabbing them is still better than running away, but not as good as shooting them to avoid injury. To you, to the other guy, maybe not, but he's trying to rob you, so.
Okay, the other issue I want to talk about is you're running for the position of governor, you're going to be a leader. What would you like to see changed in our laws that would help the situation of the lawlessness in our society?
Well, I would definitely strengthen New York State's law with regard to the duty to retreat and say, you don't have a duty to retreat if someone comes up and attacks you or attacks somebody else in public, and you can safely get away. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you can't safely get away, and you feel that like they're about to beat somebody up, then you can use deadly force. But if everybody can run away, they're supposed to run away. And I don't think that that's right.
Well, that's not right, because you're basically shirking your responsibility to maintain a civil society. You're saying you don't care. Let this criminal rule.
Right, and I have a problem with that. I have a problem with, like, maybe the police will catch him later. So, like, would I do it exactly the same as Florida? I think, I would have to take a look at it, because at this point, I have looked at the Florida law, but laws will have definitions that are in other laws and other statutes, and to understand one law, you've got to read a whole bunch of other laws. So at this point, I'm not going to rely on what the media has said. The media basically portrays it as you can just murder someone and say it is self-defense, and the cops can't do anything, and I think that's can't be the case. So, if that is the case, then I wouldn't go there, but I'm not sure that that's actually accurate. But definitely we should have some kind of stand your ground statute in New York so that, we don't just cede the streets to criminals.
Yeah, we need to raise the expectation of the fact that the individual citizen will stand up and take responsibility to make sure that society remains civil, even if that step is to shoot somebody. I mean, it sounds like a contradiction in terms. But you can't have a society unless people respect other people's rights. And as soon as somebody breaks the law and tramples on somebody's rights, society has broken down. Right. And we'll never reestablish it until that individual that's trampled on society's rules and expectations is severely reprimanded or terminated.
Well, and also, and just knowing that there are people around with guns has a deterrent effect on crime. I don't have the statistics with me, but people that try to rob somebody and have a gun put in their face are less likely to try to rob somebody again.
Well, I was in Arizona in 1974, and people can look it up. All they're going to find is police went on strike for 3 months, and the crime rate did not go up. But when I was there, prior to and afterwards, the home break-in rates were 10 a week. There were 39 murders a year, and there were 3 robberies a night. During those 3 months, you had, because the police were on strike, you had the right to carry a loaded weapon. And 1 out of 10 people carried old 6-shooters or a shotgun. And I thought I would be intimidated, but I wasn't, because I realized these were responsible people that were actually looking out for everyone. And home break-ins in those 3 months dropped to almost 0. The number of murders, 0, none, and there should have been 9 or more because everybody's carrying guns. There were only 3 robberies that I know of, And of those 3 robberies, there were 1, 3, and 5 people involved. The robbers were arrested, unharmed, taken to the police station, tried and convicted. The success rate for the police was 20% arrest rate for robberies that are happening 3 a night, and only 1% of those were getting convicted. I mean, it was pathetic. And after the police strike was over, it was safe for crime in Tucson again. So yeah, I believe if the expectations changed, and one of the most dramatic things was even the domestic violence decreased because people were empowered. They weren't frustrated anymore.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that we need to do something soon.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, this is pretty much going to wrap it up. Any final words for the audience here?
Well, I'd say obviously, if we have the standard ground law, people need to be allowed to carry guns, and we definitely need to, especially we need to end the special status of New York City, where they can just basically say that no one can own a gun unless you're rich and politically well-connected. We need to make New York a shall issue state.
Okay, thank you very much, and that does it for today.
Did you know Freedom Rocks has swag? You can help stimulate the economy and show how much you like Freedom Rocks at the same time. We've got t-shirts for men and women. We've got coffee mugs and beer steins. We've got food and beverage thermoses. You can get your own Freedom Rocks swag with the show logo, as seen in the opening title of the show, right here at our Cafe Press shop. That's cafepress.com/freedomrocks.